Hello, my name's Amanda. I'm the curator from an organization called The Sustainable Angle. And we're going to be exploring new materials landscapes from the Future Fabrics Expo. First of all, quick introduction to our work. So we create and support projects that facilitate sustainable practices right throughout the fashion supply chain. We showcase low impact materials and textiles from around the world, and we produce and communicate the latest sustainable materials research to the fashion industry and academia via our workshops, advisories, seminars, and through our biggest project, the Future Fabrics Expo. So this was the last expo we held in January in London, in a very, very large space. You can see here we have a huge collection of materials numbering around 5,000 in total. And as you can see in this photograph, they span all different fiber categories. And we seek out best practice materials in all of those fiber categories for fashion and textiles from around 200 global suppliers. And you can see there on the columns are key themes and our key messaging from the expo around the need to regenerate and restore our natural systems. And of course, to diversify our fiber basket. And to do that, we need innovations. And here is our innovations hub. You can see at the front there, materials from diverse sources such as agricultural waste or very strange material sources, cacti, leather, etc. we'll be taking a look at later. So this is really a hub where we shine a spotlight on those innovations that we think are going to change our materials landscape in the very near future, so that we're putting less stress on the more obvious material sources. And why do we do this? Well, scientific consensus tells us that we have 10 years left to bring our global temperature down to 1.5. And scientists have made a clear and compelling case that failing to achieve this puts our planet at risk and therefore humankind. We need to try to halve our annual CO2 emissions by 2030. We're currently heading for 3.0. We also know that 2/3 of our ecosystems have now been exploited beyond their capacity. And the fashion and textiles industries contribute to all of these impacts. So sustainability is not an option, it is now a critical imperative. And those impacts that I was speaking about, as I said, very clearly have issues around altering climate change, speeding up climate change, issues around preserving our oceans, biodiversity and pollution, and biodiversity on land as well. We've currently lost around 60% of terrestrial biodiversity, which needs to be halted. So our priorities need to be mitigating the climate crisis. So we need to be exploring materials that can enable us to do this. And that includes restoring soil health. And we're going to look at some examples of that. We want to be looking at materials that are grown in a way that means that those agricultural systems can sequester CO2. We need to actively restore biodiversity and seek to find materials that will enable that. And as we said before, protecting the oceans. The oceans are our largest carbon sink, holding 93% of CO2. And reducing our single-use plastics and land-based pollution as well is a critical imperative. So we've become disconnected in some ways from where we get our natural materials from. And so I think it's to take pause to actually realize that everything that we produce from fashion and textiles comes from nature, and those sources need to be preserved with utmost urgency. So we need to return really to understanding how we are a part of nature, how we're interconnected, and what the interrelationships and interdependencies are between the natural world, all grown things. So although our name is the Sustainable Angle, we're seeking now for the future to go beyond just sustaining our material cycles, but work towards a regenerative industry. So incorporating regenerative design principles and regenerative agriculture in order to achieve that, towards sustainable strategies for a climate and biodiversity emergency. So you can see there over on the left, in the past, we've been focused on reducing our impacts, lowering impacts, meaning trying to do less bad. Then we go transition into the stage of redesigning, which is the aim is to do better, or at least going neutral. And that focuses on integrated sustainable concepts at the design stage. So not just sticking plaster on what we've done wrong, but thinking about reworking it from the beginning. And towards regeneration principles, which means actively repairing and restoring what we have damaged, both environmentally and socially. So focusing specifically upon circular design systems, biodesign principles, and regenerative design with integrated socio-environmental loops. As an organization, we also work to provide solutions and toolkits to enable more positive sourcing and design practices. And in order to do this, we understand material impacts through systems thinking. And that's the process of understanding how things influence one another within a whole. In nature, systems thinking examples include ecosystems in which various elements such as air, water, plants, and animals interact together to survive, flourish, or perish. We've also created a set of criteria in consultation with the Centre for Sustainable Fashion, London College of Fashion. So these four main criteria are the criteria by which we interrogate our suppliers, and this is how we assess whether a particular material is best practice in its category. So very importantly, biodiversity that we just discussed, energy sources, absolutely critical. We are completely reliant on fossil fuel based energy sources and also use it as a raw material source. And if we are to meet the targets that we were talking about before, we need to decouple from this reliance. Also, water stress being a huge issue in many, many places around the world. So we would award that stamp for progressive methods and technologies that will significantly reduce water inputs across the textile supply chain. And also waste. We're still in a situation where we have an enormous amount of waste produced and also pollution from chemical processes involved in the production of textiles and fashion products. And this will give you a snapshot of some of the collateral that we produce for our expos and advisories. So over on the left there, you can see our 9 to define, and that's systems thinking, walk through sourcing principles with focusing on people, a planet and responsible prosperity. So it's a way of thinking about how you determine whether your material choices are more positive. They have the materials matrix in the center there. That's the thing that we start with first of all. So we organize materials into categories, and that's how we can begin the first questions towards our suppliers. Over there on the right, you can see global fiber demand. We're going to have a little look at that later as well, but you can see from the gray areas there that 2/3 of our materials globally are made from petrochemical materials. They're made from oil. A quarter is made up of cotton, and that is primarily conventionally farmed cotton, which is incredibly bad for the environment. It's pesticide and fertilizer dependent and very, very thirsty to produce. Currently, there's only around 1 to 2% of that fiber demand is taken up with organic production, but that is growing. And then across the bottom there, we're tracking the history of our material sources to see where we think we may be headed with our new materials landscape, which we hope will offer more promise for the future in managing our resources much more intelligently. And we also produce matrices for standards, certifications, and initiatives that can help you assure best practices when you're sourcing specific materials. And for our last expo in January, we also aligned those certifications with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And you can see there over on the right what each particular certification is aligned to in the way of their initiatives. This is just a snapshot. You can see the larger matrices in detail on our website. And we also have a virtual expo. So particularly in these times of lockdown, when brands are trying to source and need to do so virtually, they can do this through our virtual expo, again, available through our website. We don't have all 5,000 of the materials on there, but there are around 2,000 or so of the materials featured with Zoom function, search function, all the usual things you will get on a website. We've also partnered with an organization called Textile. So there's a certain number of textiles are available to buy through our virtual website. And there's also look out for buttons as well, which will flag up that buy button. And also there's many qualities with small minimum order quantities. And why do we concentrate on materials as an organization? It's because materials really matter. 80% of environmental impacts can be determined at the design stage. And of course, this is the place that we hope to capture and inspire designers. And when they can do that, they're also captivated to learn about the sustainability impacts of the materials that they are choosing. So as we referred to before, as far as global fiber demand goes, we've got around 65%, 2/3 or so of our materials globally are made from oil. There's got a quarter cotton, conventionally farmed, very bad for the environment. And only around 11% or so is made up of all other fiber categories. So it lacks diversity. One thing that designers and brands can do that's a very positive thing is to think about diversifying their fiber basket and not being over-reliant on 2 or 3 different fiber categories. And this is an important way for fashion to support biodiversity by, for example, instead of always going to default cotton, exploring other cellulose sources such as bast fibers. That means linen, flax, hemp, and nettle. And this is supporting regenerative agricultural practices and the protection of biodiversity, and even acting as a carbon sink to sequester CO2. So just shine a spotlight on the benefits of organic cotton. So the agricultural production system in globally organic textile standard organic cotton, it's working with certified organic cotton, ensuring that cotton is tracked throughout the supply chain and all stages of production, including washing, spinning, dyeing, and garment construction, are according to strict environmental standards and labour conditions, which are aligned to international labour organisation principles. We've got a great example, actually, of organic regenerative agriculture in practice here with Ashadi, one of our suppliers from Tamil Nadu in India. And the founder has an amazing philosophy. He kind of didn't understand what regenerative agriculture was to begin with, and then he realized that it actually was the traditional ancient agriculture that had been practiced by farmers for thousands of years, and the wisdom that was held there. And so a lot of those ancient and traditional practices can actually solve today's environmental and social problems that we spoke about before. Just want to introduce you as well to some very beautiful Ashadi textiles. We can have a look at the diversity and see examples of the regenerative program that I was speaking about. Here we have beautiful sheer cotton and some very fine, soft, regeneratively produced cottons in these prints. This is from the program that Ashadi created. What's really interesting about the way that Ashadi work is that they're not making any material speculatively. It's all to order, so there's no waste in their production systems. And then we go on to another organic cotton supplier. This is Zeynep. They're a Turkish supplier. So Zeynep use a broad range of fibers, but they're primarily specializing in knit. So they're using organic cotton, certified organic cotton, recycled polyester. We've got this beautiful one here, which is a mixture of organic cotton with wool. So just 8% wool, it gives it a beautiful touch, and 15% hemp. Hemp is a very positive fiber to grow environmentally. Again, some recycled polyester, organic cotton with some tencel, which is environmentally best practice regenerated cellulosic, and a very beefy organic cotton and recycled polyester. We've also got vegan textiles here as well. This is a very interesting supplier because they, again, they're a startup company actually, and they were created to provide a luxury alternative to silk that's both sustainable and cruelty-free. Often alternatives to the qualities of silk are made from petroleum-based polyester, which we're used to seeing in the market. But vegan textile and innovation are committed to using only blends of plant-based fibers or even agricultural waste in their materials. So they could be using, for example, you can see here, it's a tencel, a Bemberg cupro, again a tencel here, and this beautiful fine sheeny, make very, very good silk substitutes. So if we're choosing materials from these sources, that what's happening with the growing process is we can actually look to find that there are positive and measurable outcomes that can support the sequestering of CO2 and obviously return to biodiversity in their systems. So the ecological outcome verification is a practical way to measure those positive environmental outcomes through soil health, through actually focusing on making that soil healthy enough to be a carbon sink, ensuring that those agricultural systems increasing grass coverage and boosting water retention. And no toxic pesticides and chemicals are used, avoiding the agricultural runoff that pollutes rivers and oceans, and of course promoting the return of biodiversities to those particular agricultural contexts. And we introduce you to a really interesting material development that really thinks about those whole interconnected systems that I spoke of earlier. So this is BananaTex. And this was really the innovators that developed this fiber returned to a historic fiber, the abaca plant. So that's the non-fruit bearing banana plant, and realized that it had centuries of being used as for a useful fiber for paper making and rope making, etc. And it grows in these mixed agricultural plantations using no pesticides or extra water. And it's contributing to reforestation in areas of the Philippines that had previously been eroded by soil damage because of monocultural palm plantation. And then it adds this extra income also to the farming communities. And it is a completely circular material. So let's have a look now at some examples. So this BananaTex was conceived really to be a natural alternative to petrochemical-based materials that we normally associate with hard-wearing products such as rucksacks, etc. So you can see here it's got a very structured weave. It's a very, very strong canvas, extremely durable. And some of these qualities actually have a wax coating. So they're coated to make them waterproof with a completely biodegradable coating. But they're all 100% abaca plant. And the technology that's been used to create this particular fiber, because it looks very high tech in a way. It almost doesn't look like a natural fiber, but it's been using paper technology to create this very, very strong yarn. So we have a look at some other fiber types as well that can have positive impacts from a regenerative perspective. So this example is a silk farm. And this has been designed in a way that really makes sure that all of those interconnected elements with the natural systems is at play within this terraced intercropping system. So we can see that the way that the water is used is very intelligently set up so it's running down the terraces. They have solar powered lamps for pest control instead of using chemical fertilizers and pesticides. They're actually using animals. You can see here on the left, the chickens are eating the pests. They're left to roam around between the mulberry leaves, and they're using natural techniques such as organic limestone ash to deter the pests as well. So this is a whole interrelated system that works beautifully without needing to resort to chemicals. And cultivated silk from the Bombyx moray moth feel exclusively on these mulberry leaves. So it's really, really important that the higher the quality and the fresher the leaves, the higher the quality of the fiber. Cultivating mulberry trees in a balanced ecological system increases the yields per land use and provides environmental and economic benefits, restoring and regenerating the soil. Mulberry trees also grow really well on marginal land, and their deep roots can prevent soil erosion. So we'll have a look at some examples from our suppliers collection. This image is an amazing material seeking to make us a fur substitute, and it's actually created from the waste silk strands. Also going to have a look at some of the more traditional qualities here. This one is a very beautiful organza satin, and it's created from tencel lux. So it's blending that tencel lux with organic silk. And here we have a beautiful silk charmeuse. So that's 100% silk again, GOTS standard certified silk produced in an organic and non-cruel process. What's interesting here is that the silkworms are grown to cultivate the silk without any kind of pesticide, fungicide, or genetic spray. And most of the piercing, reeling, and twisting of the cocoons is done by local women. And another self-stripe here. This is a 30% tencel lux and 70% organic silk to create this organza. And now we're going to have a look at some very beautiful silks from Clerici. So they are a historic silk producer in Como in Italy. So the home of sort of high quality silk. And they're very well known for their jacquards. You can see here beautiful, delicate jacquard, and also a fantastic ottoman, and also a very beautiful tactile, scrunchy taffeta. So all 100% silk. And their main yarn supplier has got certification covering the whole supply chain, from the harvest of raw materials to the weaving of the silk yarns. And this is a really interesting new development we were very excited to see. So this is taking, we see so much now interest in the fashion industry in circularity and materials. This is a fantastically creative example. So Mantero, again, Como-based Italian silk supplier, very well known for their beautiful silks. We're realizing there was an extraordinary amount of waste that is created through that process, either through the factory or through when they supply their brands. And they developed a new fiber called Resilk, which is absolutely beautiful. And when we got it, we felt that we didn't think it was silk. It felt so much like either a cashmere or a very fine animal fiber. But it's 100% upcycled silk, and these qualities are absolutely beautiful, very tactile. We've got some reversible qualities. We've got a beautiful jacquard here as well. So they're making very creative textiles from this very unique fiber. And when we come to animal fibers, of course, they're much appreciated. We know that the noble fibers are really the cornerstone of luxury fashion products. And this is a wonderful example of best practice right the way throughout the supply chain. And this is a yak fiber supply chain. So they're working in association with UPW, the world's largest spinner of animal fibers, but they also work with lots of other fibers as well. This is focusing specifically on the yak supply chain. And it was a really nice story about how Choquet have been working with herding communities in China for over 12 years, training and refining the segmentation process of yak down, and then also the whole processing, which they're doing in conjunction with UPW. Based in Guangdong, and you can see that whole supply chain is completely traceable, got certified, and they're using GRS certified yarns as well. 1% of Choquet sales revenue goes towards the Community Development Fund, empowering the communities in their supply chain. And so far, over 800 herders in Western China have benefited from Choquet's healthcare and education programs. So now we're going to have a look at the very beautiful qualities that UPW are knitting from various different luxury fibers. So this one is a yak fiber. And often when we're introducing our brands to this fiber, they can't tell the difference between it and cashmere. It is super luxurious. It has a very beautiful touch. They're also obviously working with cashmere as well, and also RWS wool standard as well. So the wool standard, the responsible wool standards, is evolved from the 5 animal freedoms to the 5 provisions, broadening its approach from protecting the sheep to the removal of negative factors to a more comprehensive framework, and it actively seeks to create opportunities that deliver positive outcomes for the animals. And we're just going to move on to regenerated cellulosic. So what we mean by that is a viscose type material that has been created from a natural source material, usually trees, and been regenerated chemically by man-made processes. So it's a very important fabric in fashion, and Stella McCartney was one of the first brands to realize that the impacts of the viscose supply chain upon the natural world were clearly very negative. So I just want to point you towards an incredible initiative. It's called Canopy Style. So since 2013, this organization, which is set up to protect ancient and endangered forests and make sure that no non-certified material is used in the fashion supply chain. So it's about trying to get lots of different brands together to agree that they won't source their viscose that's including ancient and endangered forest feedstock. And so we're going to look now at Kipaş. So they are a Turkish supplier, and they're very, very focused on sustainable practices right the way throughout all of their operations, from water-saving technologies to the fibers that they produce. This is one of their denim qualities. So we're going to explore also the variety of fibers that they're using within, this is just a small range of from their denim collection. So they're using pre-consumer recycled cotton. They're mixing that with Reprieve recycled polyester. They're also using organic cotton with a blend of post-consumer recycled cotton as well. So retrieving garments and putting them back into new textiles. And another organic cotton here, and Reprieve recycled polyester as well. So we just spoke about the recycled polyester content with a few of those examples that we're showing you. And I think that now that the plastic pollution problem is pretty much on all consumers' eyeline, there's been a big drive to harvest plastic waste, whether that be in the oceans or terrestrially. And this is one of our key suppliers in this field. We have a massive cleanup job to do with all of that plastic pollution. So this is Recyctex. They do a huge creative range of recycled polyesters. Recyctex has such an interesting story. Their founder is hugely committed to actually being involved in the cleanup of these waste plastic materials himself. And they do a massive range of both technical materials and even more sort of dressy qualities as well, but very, very high quality and very creative weaves as well. So this one here is a blend. It's actually really interesting because it's got 71% recycled polyester, 16% cotton, and some hemp as well, so making use of an ecologically advantageous fiber. And chemically, this is actually a chemically recycled polyester made from fabric offcuts, discarded clothes, and also textile waste. And so they're very interested in the whole life cycle of their materials. And this one here, a much more robust and sort of technological looking weave. And this is made from locally recovered PET. So they're actually tracing, and their ambition is to actually track and trace and make sure that they can actually verify the actual locale that these PET bottles were collected from. So we've probably all heard that scientists are predicting that by 2050 there will be more plastic waste in the oceans than fish. And we've seen a plethora of innovations that are working towards this cleanup. So this is EcoAlf, 2 examples here. They're working with fishermen in both Spain and Thailand to retrieve plastic waste. So while those fishing communities are not catching fish, they are making an income from harvesting the waste PET bottles and other plastic trash. There's also Parley. They're very well known for their huge ocean cleanup initiatives and their mission to shine a spotlight on the marine pollution issue. And they created this organization to place that pollution in the spotlight, and it's a catalyst for what they call a materials revolution, which eventually means completely decoupling from petrochemical-based materials. But before we can do that, we've got a lot of recovery to do. And so they have been working with many different organizations, including Adidas, to produce their ocean plastic trainer, best-selling ocean plastic trainer, but also surprisingly, even working in collaboration with traditional silk mills. So this is a really, really interesting example, is that Clerici, who again are a very traditional silk mill from Como, are working with Parley to create a recycled polyester, ocean polyester jacquard. You can see here, super luxurious looking. And obviously their centuries of really understanding silk and understanding how to work with it produce a very, very high quality and beautiful outcome. There's also Econil. So this initiative, again, collaborations are very positive in this area because it's about bringing, surfacing the fact that, you know, a recycled polyester does not have to be seen as waste, does not have to be seen as cheaper or lower in quality. If it's very beautiful fiber in the first place and the textile technology is a very high level, we're looking at making true luxury products from waste plastic. This one is Econil's initiative to create the Prada Re-Nylon range of nylon accessories. So now we're going to move along also to another area which is beloved of luxury fashion, and that is animal skins. So we're seeing an enormous amount of interest now in moving away from traditional bovine sources for animal skins. And this is Novakeru, so they're a super interesting company, and they working with communities on the banks of the Amazon. So these communities would be fishing for these huge pirarucu fish. And what's very, very interesting about this is the communities were been eating this fish for millennia and throwing the skin away. And so with this amazing initiative, they are taught to preserve the fish stocks because they're very, very valuable to them. And the fish stocks in this particular part of the world have gone up by 400% because, of course, now those communities have a valuable product to sell as well. So this is a very large scale, extremely durable and tough leather substitute, but it comes from a genuine post-consumer source, and it's dyed and tanned using responsible processes. Novakeru also involved in creating a vegan leather, which is not really a leather. It comes from a leaf that you can see there on the left, and it has characteristics similar to animal leather. These huge, tough leaves are a product of natural and renewable origin, the elephant ear leaf, and they're planted together with reforestation farms. And this reforestation practice provides oxygen to the atmosphere. Any organic waste that are created from this tanning process helps to preserve the biome, wildlife, and waterways. So we'll just have a look at the nature of this particular leaf. So as you can see, it's got a leather-like surface. You can actually see the veins of the leaf there. And it's backed with a range of different materials. So that could either be a recycled polyester sort of ultra suede, or could be a tencel. So it's laminated either onto a tencel, or could even be an organic cotton backing as well. And we're seeing a huge surge in innovation around bioleathers. They're popping up all over the place. This particular one we showcased at our expo in January. This is Deserto, and this is from a Mexican, an organic Mexican cactus farm. So it is bio-based. It's not completely bio-origin, but a proportion of bio-based cactus material is used to create the bio leather. It's also had, Pinatex has had a lot of press recently. We're seeing even more interest in it as time goes by, as vegan lifestyles accelerate. So this is using agricultural waste, and it's about taking the leaves from the pineapple plantations. So the pineapples are taken, obviously, as food source, leaving leaves behind, which are normally just left to rot or burned. But it's about taking this valuable source of cellulose and creating a non-woven felted type material, which is highly durable. And it's got a coating on the surface of it, which gives it a sort of leather-like feel. And the founder actually worked very much with the local communities. So this is about community support and integration as well. And so Dr. Carmen Hyosa, who's the founder and the creator of Pinatex, has a lovely quote here. She believes that design is a connecting tool between people, economics, and the environment. And she feels that out of this communion, understanding and respect, new ideas and products with integrity can come about. That was her aim in conceiving of Pinatex. There's also a wonderful new leather substitute as well that came out. We featured this at the expo. This is Mirum by Natural Fiber Welding, and it's plant-based. It requires no tanning and is made from natural polymers. Materials such as waste, cork, hemp, and coconut create these biodegradable composites sort of fused together with completely non-toxic, 100% natural inputs. Let's have a look at some innovations that will be coming up over the next few years of what we like to think are going to be part of a new materials landscape and form a new materials revolution that is much more about working in synergy with nature. And the impetus for these materials is usually around either working with nature or being inspired by nature to create materials from sources that are much more synergetic with the way that we live and not depending on resources that we need for food. So these new biofabricated materials, biofabricated meaning materials grown by harnessing biological organisms. And this results in the production of complex living and non-living biological products from raw materials, such as living cells and molecules. And they do this by synthesizing nature's materials, but with actually new properties. So this will be focusing on materials like algae that are maybe underexplored, particularly in the fashion and textiles industries. Mycelium, which is the vegetative root structure of a mushroom. And it consists of these sort of branching little thread-like roots. And it can even be trained into engineered shapes to form either films or flexible sheets or rigid blocks. Or even using bacteria, so designing with the bacteria, and using yeast and fermentation processes to create brand new material outcomes. So this is one example. This is a newly developed biocomposite material made from bacterial cellulose, and that is using coconut water from agricultural waste from the coconut industry in southern India. So the natural fibers are extracted from the stem of the banana plant. Hemp and sisal provide the base. So they're taking a woven base from any of these materials and growing the bacterial cellulose around that base through a fermentation process and then drying it out. Creates a very, very durable, sturdy, waxy, boardy material. Probably heard of this. This has had a lot of press. This is Bolt Thread's collaboration with Stella McCartney to produce a leather-like substitute. And this is using mycelium, so those small threads of root structures that I was talking about before. And they've developed a material called mylo from these cells. So engineering it to assemble into a supple yet durable material. So it's got the potential, obviously, to biodegrade from its biosource. And it can replace real and synthetic leather, because most of our synthetic leathers currently on the market are actually petroleum-based. This is also, there's a hot on the leather substitute trend is also reishi from Myco Works. This was launched just on the cusp of the first COVID lockdown, and it has attracted a lot of investment. It's a very, very beautiful, fine-grained mycelium leather substitute. And this is Ecovative Designs MycoFlex. And this enables the engineering of high-performance, pure mycelium foam that can be tailored to many industries and applications. I'm going to just have a look at it now, and you can see that it's got a kind of a very unique, pliable but sturdy surface, and grained very much like a sort of tough animal skin. But this is one of many iterations. They produce many types of materials from this particular mycelium material source. And coming up very soon will be Modern Meadows Zoa. This has been in research and development for a long time, and they're using cellular agriculture to grow animal leather from cell cultures. It's produced by inserting cow collagen genes into yeast cell cultures. So using that fermentation process that I was talking about before. And then it can make many copies of the cells, creating a material that has nothing to do with the animal genome source. So we're very excited to welcome the new raft of materials as they start to come out, as they achieve investment and begin to come to scale. Thank you very much for listening, and do follow us